Okay, let's look at our next set of cases here. So, still solving quadratic equations, we are going to start diving into factoring now. And we're going to talk about something called the zero product property. This is a pretty intuitive thing. I don't think it's very complicated. You don't have to really remember the name of it, but because I think the concept of it is going to make a lot of sense to you. If you have two things that you're multiplying by each other, supposing you have this thing x and you have this thing y, and you know that their product is 0, what that means is one of three things. It means that one of these is 0. So x could equal 0, and if x is 0, when you multiply it by y, 0 times y equals 0. All right? Well, y could be 0 too on its own. And when you multiply x by 0, you also get 0. And then the third case is when they're both 0. So what's nice about this is we can use this when we can write our expressions in factored form as a product of two things, either two binomials or a binomial and a monomial. And when you have that, then you know that if you can get it equal to 0, we know that we've forced a situation where we can find a solution for these items. So in this first problem here we're looking at, it's already factored for us. We have a product. We've got 3m times the quantity m plus 2. So what we know from the zero product property is that one of them must be equal to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, 3m is either equal to 0 or m plus 2 is equal to 0, and then we're just going to solve it. All right, well, 3m equaling 0, this is a pretty straightforward problem. You divide both sides by 3, and that gets m by itself, and you get m is equal to 0 because 0 divided by anything is always 0. All right, this other one here, pretty straightforward as well. M plus 2 equals 0. What number does m have to be in order, when you add 2 to it, to make it 0? Well, you find out by subtracting 2 from both sides, and then you would get m is equal to negative 2. So for this one, your solutions would be, m is equal to negative 2 or m is equal to 0. If we write it in set, it would be m is equal to 0, I did that wrong. M is equal to negative 2 or 0. And that is your solution set for it. And again, because if I multiply this out, my highest degree would be 2, because you'd have m squared from multiplying m times m. That means that the largest number of solutions I can have, or the largest number of roots I could have, is 2. All right, now for this one, we've got it equal to 0, which is what we want. So what we want to do is, instead of writing this as a difference of two monomials, we want to factor this so that we get a product, because then we can use that 0 multiplication rule. All right, so 8b squared minus 40b, well, I know that I can take an 8 out of both of those. That's my greatest common factor of the coefficients. My greatest common factor of the variables is b. And then that just leaves b minus 5 equals 0 over here. And if you don't trust your work, just multiply it out. See if it works. All right, and I'm pretty confident that's right. So now you set up your two equations. So you set this equal to 0, and then you set that equal to 0, and that will be one of the two cases. In order for this to happen and to be true, one of those must be equal to 0, or they must both equal 0. So for this one over here, you got 8b equals 0, divide them both by 8. 0 divided by 8 is 0. The monomials are always really straightforward. Those are almost always equal 0. b minus 5 equals 0. And so if you add 5, both sides, you get b is equal to 5. So our solution is b is going to be equal to 0 or 5. All right, let's look at one last example here. X squared equals negative 10x. Well, the two previous examples, we always had something equal to 0. This one, I got something equal to another thing. My first instinct would be to take the square root of both sides, but that presents all kinds of problems over here. because you've got a negative number here, and then you've got an x that you can't take a nice clean square root of. So that's not going to work. So hopefully at that point you realize to yourself, well, if I get everything over to the same side, maybe I can figure out what to do with this. So if you had 10x to both sides, right, then you can't combine 10x and x squared, so you just write them next to each other, and you get this. All right, it's equal to 0. I can factor these so that I can use my zero product property. All right, let's do that. Let's pull an x out. You get x plus 10. It's equal to 0, right? And then you've got your two cases now. So you know one case where x is where you take this and set it equal to 0. So we wrote that down. And the other one where you take this and set it equal to 0. So this one, there's no solving to do. X equals 0. It's written out. It's all simplified. So that's wonderful. And then on this other problem here, we got x plus 10 equals 0. Well, let's subtract 10 from both sides and get x by itself. X is equal to negative 10. That is as simplified as it can be. And your solution set is going to be x is equal to either negative 10 or 0. Remember, put your smallest number to the left and then go larger, left to right. Okay, so those three examples should cover most of what you'll see. One thing I love about math is even when you don't see an example of something, you generally know it's going to be kind of common sense with that and something logical. So good luck with these. And we got one more video where we're going to show you how to do more of the factoring of trinomials.